The night air crackled with tension as Lars stood at the center of the flickering circle of fire, heart racing as the Draugr advanced. The villagers around him clutched their torches, fear etched on their faces, but their determination began to waver as the flames sputtered in the chilling wind. The moment the torches dimmed, the Draugr lunged forward, their skeletal forms closing in on the circle. "Hold the line," Lars shouted, his voice cutting through the chaos. He felt the energy of the rune pulsing in his pocket, urging him to take action. "Don't let them break through." The flames flickered wildly, the heat pulsating in waves as the Draugr drew nearer. Each step they took felt like a death knell, the ground vibrating with the echoes of their hollow footfalls. The villagers rallied, raising their torches higher, but the flames were no match for the cold fear that gripped them. With a swift motion, Lars pulled the rune from his pocket and held it aloft, its glow brightening as he focused his will. "By fire and spirit, I command you," he cried, his voice steady and resolute. "Return to the earth." The Draugr hesitated, their glowing eyes narrowing as they felt the power of the rune. But the moment was fleeting. With a surge of energy, they lunged forward, clawed hands reaching for the living. Lars felt a rush of adrenaline surge through him as he stepped closer to the edge of the circle. "We can't let them through." He took a deep breath, channeling his fear into strength. He turned to the villagers, their faces reflecting both hope and terror. "We need to ignite the flames again." Just then, a chilling howl pierced the night, reverberating through the graveyard. The Draugr responded with a surge of energy, their forms coalescing into a dark wave that threatened to engulf the circle. The flames flickered, casting long shadows that danced erratically. Lars lunged forward, raising the rune high, feeling its warmth envelop him. "Light, burn bright," he shouted, throwing his body into the ritual he had seen Ingrid perform. "Ignite with the power of the past." With those words, a brilliant flash erupted from the rune, expanding outward and igniting the air with a fierce light. The fire roared to life, shooting up in a brilliant blaze, pushing back against the encroaching darkness. The Draugr recoiled, momentarily stunned, their forms wavering in the heat. "Now, push them back," Lars commanded, adrenaline coursing through him. The villagers rallied, their torches bursting back to life, flames leaping higher as they pressed forward, driving the Draugr away from their circle. The battle raged as the villagers fought with newfound courage, torches swinging and flames leaping, illuminating the night. Each swing became a defiance against the darkness, a fight for survival. The Draugr screeched, their anguished cries filling the air, but Lars felt the tide beginning to turn. With each flicker of flame, he could see the resolve in the villagers' eyes growing stronger. They were fighting not just for their lives, but for the honor of those who had been wronged. As the flames flickered and surged, Lars knew they could win this battle, but it would come at a cost. They had to endure, for the Draugr would not rest until their vengeance was fulfilled. The battle in the graveyard had ignited a fierce determination within Lars and the villagers, but it had also taken its toll. The flames flickered against the twilight sky, casting a warm glow on the faces of the weary but resolute villagers. They had fought bravely, pushing back against the Draugr. But Lars knew this was only a temporary victory. The darkness still lingered, and the price of their survival weighed heavily on his heart. He needed guidance, and he realized that the only person who could provide it was Ingrid. With the embers still glowing and the remnants of the Draugr fading into the night, Lars felt an urgent pull to return to Ingrid's cabin deep in the woods. He had dismissed her warnings before, but now, more than ever, he understood the importance of her wisdom. She had been their last line of defense against the horrors that lurked in the shadows, and he owed it to her memory to seek her knowledge once more. As Lars made his way through the darkening woods, the trees seemed to whisper around him, their branches twisting like fingers in the night. The earlier adrenaline from the battle faded, replaced by an unsettling unease. Every rustle in the underbrush made him jump. Every shadow felt like a reminder of the horrors he had faced. But he pressed on, his resolve stronger than his fear. When he finally reached Ingrid's cabin, the familiar sight brought both relief and sorrow. The door hung slightly ajar, a sign that no one had been there for some time. Inside, the cabin was dark, and the air was heavy with the scent of earth and herbs, mingling with the bittersweet aroma of loss. Lars stepped inside, his heart heavy as he glanced around, searching for any sign of Ingrid. The hearth lay cold, and the shelves were lined with jars of dried herbs, remnants of her craft. The memories of her gentle presence flooded back. Her warm smile, her words of wisdom, the stories she had shared about the old ways. He felt a pang of regret for not having listened more closely, for not fully appreciating her teachings while she was alive. As he moved further into the cabin, he spotted the small table where she had often worked, surrounded by ancient texts and scrolls. A single piece of parchment lay there, slightly crumpled, but still legible. It was a message she had written, filled with notes and symbols he had seen her use in her rituals. Hope flickered in his chest. He picked up the parchment, his fingers brushing over her handwriting. "The power of the past can guide the living," it read. "When darkness encroaches, remember, unity brings strength and knowledge is the light." Lars felt a surge of determination. He would honor Ingrid's legacy, share her teachings with the villagers, and arm them with the knowledge they needed to combat the darkness that still lingered. As he stood in the cabin, the weight of her absence felt lighter, replaced by a sense of purpose. He would not let her sacrifice be in vain. The battle was not over, and he would face whatever lay ahead with the strength of the past guiding him. With newfound determination, Lars left Ingrid's cabin, clutching the parchment that contained her words of wisdom. He knew the village needed to unite against the lingering darkness, and he had to rally them for what would be the final confrontation with the Draugr. It was now or never. He could not allow fear to consume him or his community. As he made his way back through the woods, the night air was heavy with tension. The atmosphere crackled, as if the very essence of the forest was holding its breath in anticipation. Each step felt like a march toward destiny, the shadows shifting as if they too were aware of the impending confrontation. Lars's heart raced, not just from fear, but from a growing sense of purpose. Reaching the village, he found the villagers still recovering from the chaos of the earlier battle. Their faces were etched with exhaustion, but Lars could see glimmers of resolve behind their eyes. He climbed onto a crate in the village square, calling for their attention. The murmurs quieted as they turned to face him, their expressions a mix of curiosity and skepticism. "We cannot let the Draugr take our homes, our lives," Lars shouted, raising the parchment high above his head. "Ingrid's teachings have shown me the way forward. We must unite, gather our strength, and confront the Draugr once and for all." A few villagers exchanged doubtful glances, but Stig stepped forward, his face drawn but resolute. "What do we need to do, Lars? We will create a circle of protection, using fire as our shield," Lars explained, his voice steadying as he spoke. "We need to gather as many torches as we can and form a barrier around the graves. If we stand together, we can draw on the power of our unity and push back the darkness." The crowd began to murmur in agreement, their fear slowly transforming into a collective strength. One by one, they stepped forward to grab torches, their faces set with determination. Lars felt a surge of hope. Together, they could reclaim their village. As the last rays of sunlight dipped below the horizon, the villagers gathered at the graveyard, forming a protective circle around the disturbed graves. The air was charged with anticipation, the weight of their fear tempered by the flickering flames of their torches. Lars stood at the front, the rune still clutched tightly in his hand, feeling its energy pulse in time with his heartbeat. Suddenly, the ground began to tremble, and a cold wind whipped through the graveyard. The Draugr were coming, drawn by the scent of fear. Lars could feel the familiar chill creep into the air, the haunting cries of the undead echoing through the night. "Hold your ground," Lars shouted. As the first Draugr emerged from the shadows, its skeletal form illuminated by the flickering flames. The villagers tightened their grips on their torches, hearts racing as they faced the approaching horde. But Lars stood tall, raising the rune high. "We will not let fear rule us. We will protect our home." As the Draugr advanced, the villagers joined him in chanting the ancient words from Ingrid's teachings, their voices rising in unison. The flames blazed higher, fueled by their determination, casting a fierce light against the encroaching darkness. This time they would not falter. They would confront the Draugr together, united in purpose and spirit, ready to reclaim their future. As the Draugr surged toward them, their hollow eyes gleaming with rage, Lars felt the weight of their collective wrath pressing against the circle of fire. The villagers stood shoulder to shoulder, clutching their torches, but Lars knew that mere fire wouldn't be enough to vanquish the vengeful spirits that sought retribution. He could see the fear in their eyes, but also a flicker of resolve. They were prepared to fight, yet he sensed that the true battle would require a sacrifice greater than anything they had faced before. "Listen to me," Lars shouted over the howling wind, desperation coloring his voice. "To truly banish the Draugr, we must offer something precious. We must break the cycle of vengeance that has gripped this land." Stig turned to him, confusion evident on his face. "What do you mean? What can we possibly offer?" Lars swallowed hard, his throat dry. Ingrid spoke of a soul that must be offered to quell their anger. It doesn't have to be another life. It can be a sacrifice of intent, a willingness to confront the darkness within ourselves. He took a deep breath, gathering his courage. "I will do it. I will offer myself." Gasps echoed through the crowd, disbelief mingled with horror. "No, Lars," a woman cried, her eyes wide with fear. "We can't let you do this." "This is not just about me," he replied firmly, meeting their gazes. "This is about all of us. If I can face the Draugr's wrath, it might give you the strength to push them back. We need to end this cycle of pain for good." The villagers looked at one another, uncertainty rippling through the group. But Lars could see the flicker of understanding in their eyes. They had all lost something to the Draugr's curse. This was their chance to reclaim their lives, their future. As the Draugr closed in, the air thick with tension, Lars stepped forward, holding the rune high above his head. The villagers began to chant the ancient words they had learned from Ingrid, their voices rising in a crescendo. The flames flickered but held strong, a barrier against the encroaching darkness. "Take me," Lars shouted, the heat of the flames warming his skin. "Let my sacrifice cleanse this village. I offer my spirit to restore the balance." The Draugr hesitated, the anger in their hollow eyes wavering for the briefest moment. Lars could feel their confusion, the flicker of recognition in their ethereal forms. He knew this was a gamble, a chance that could either save them or doom them all. With a final, determined breath, he stepped toward the oncoming tide of the undead, the rune pulsing with energy in his hand. "I will not let fear rule us any longer." In that moment, Lars understood that sacrifice was not merely about loss. It was about embracing hope and the possibility of a brighter future. He was ready to face whatever lay ahead, even if it meant stepping into the unknown, trusting that his sacrifice would pave the way for the living to reclaim their lives from the grip of the Draugr. As Lars stepped forward, a surge of energy coursed through him, fueled by the chanting villagers and the warmth of the torches surrounding him. The flames flickered wildly, illuminating the graveyard with an otherworldly glow that cast long shadows over the headstones. The Draugr, sensing his defiance, hesitated momentarily, their hollow forms writhing as if caught between their desire for vengeance and the power of the light. Lars raised the rune high above his head, its surface shimmering in the firelight. "By fire and spirit I command you," he shouted, his voice steady and unwavering. "Let this flame cleanse the darkness that has plagued us." The villagers echoed his words, their voices growing louder, blending into a single powerful chorus. The heat from the torches intensified, flames licking higher as if responding to their collective resolve. With each chant, the glow of the rune brightened, and the energy pulsing within Lars seemed to synchronize with the heartbeat of the earth itself. But the Draugr were not easily deterred. They surged forward, a tide of rotting flesh and anger, their mournful cries filling the air with a chilling resonance. Lars felt the coldness seep into his bones, but he pressed on, focusing on the flickering flames. He needed to harness their power to push back the encroaching darkness. "Form a tighter circle," he shouted to the villagers, his heart racing. "Keep the flames strong." With renewed determination, the villagers tightened their formation, their torches raised high, illuminating the night. Lars felt a deep connection with them. They were no longer just frightened individuals, but a united front against the undead. The flames roared to life, a fierce barrier against the Draugr's advance. The Draugr paused at the edge of the firelight, their eyes flickering with confusion. For a brief moment, Lars felt a glimmer of hope. Perhaps they could truly push back the darkness. But then, a powerful gust of wind howled through the graveyard, extinguishing a few of the torches and sending a shudder of fear through the villagers. "Stay strong," Lars cried, his voice rising above the chaos. "Don't let them break our spirit." The villagers rallied, reigniting the fallen torches with frenzied determination. Lars concentrated on the rune, willing its energy to flow through him, igniting the flames anew. He could feel the power building within him, a force that resonated with the very essence of the land. As the Draugr advanced once more, the flames surged higher, enveloping them in a brilliant light. The undead shrieked, their forms twisting and writhing in the heat. Lars could sense the tide beginning to turn. The energy of the villagers' unity was driving the Draugr back. "Together," he shouted, feeling the weight of their shared resolve, "we will banish the darkness." In that moment, the flames erupted into a brilliant conflagration, lighting up the graveyard as if the sun had risen in the middle of the night. The Draugr screamed, their forms dissolving into ashes as the heat enveloped them. Lars knew they were on the verge of victory, but the battle was far from over. With the flames rising, he had one chance to reclaim their village and set the lost souls free. The dawn broke over the graveyard, casting a soft, golden light on the smoldering remnants of the Draugr. As the flames dwindled to embers, Lars felt the weight of exhaustion settle in his bones, but relief washed over him like a warm tide. The battle had been fierce, but they had triumphed. The village, once gripped by fear, was now free from the clutches of the undead. As he stepped away from the charred remains of the Draugr, Lars turned to face the villagers. They were weary but alive, their faces reflecting a mix of disbelief and newfound hope. The tension that had filled the air for so long had dissipated, replaced by an overwhelming sense of camaraderie and relief. Stig approached Lars, a hesitant smile breaking across his face. "You did it, Lars. We did it together." The words seemed to lift the spirits of those around them, and a wave of quiet cheers rose from the crowd. Lars nodded, still catching his breath. "We fought for each other. This victory belongs to all of us." The realization of their unity filled him with pride. They had faced the darkness together and emerged stronger. As the villagers gathered around him, they shared stories of their bravery and the sacrifices they had made. They spoke of the flames that had purged the graveyard, igniting a light that had dispelled their fears. The bond they shared in that moment was palpable, a collective strength forged in the fires of adversity. In the days that followed, the village slowly returned to its normal rhythm, but the scars of the past lingered. The graves of Halvor, Thora, and Ingrid stood as solemn reminders of what they had endured. Yet the villagers honored them, telling stories of their lives, celebrating their contributions to the community. Lars helped organize a memorial where flowers were laid at each grave, a tribute to those who had fallen. With each passing day, the village began to flourish again. The fields were tended, laughter returned to the marketplace, and the sounds of children playing filled the air once more. The oppressive darkness that had loomed over them had been lifted, but Lars understood that the memories of their struggle would forever be etched in their hearts. As the sun set one evening, Lars found himself standing at the edge of the village, watching the people he loved return to their routines. He felt a sense of peace, a calm that had eluded him for so long. But he also felt a deep responsibility, a commitment to ensure that the lessons learned from their ordeal were never forgotten. Lars gathered the villagers around a bonfire that night, the flames dancing brightly against the darkening sky. He shared Ingrid's teachings, the stories of the past, and the importance of honoring their connection to the land and the spirits that dwelled within it. Together, they forged a pact to protect their village, to embrace the old ways while moving forward with hope. The village had returned to normal, but it was a new normal, one imbued with resilience, strength, and a profound understanding of the balance between light and darkness. They had faced their fears, and in doing so had emerged stronger, united by the bonds of community and the memory of those they had lost. As the village returned to its vibrant self, Lars felt an ache deep within him. a reminder of those they had lost during the turmoil. Though the people laughed and celebrated the newfound peace, he could not shake the weight of grief that settled over him like a heavy cloak. One grave in particular called to him, the unmarked grave of Ingrid, the wise woman whose teachings had saved them all. Determined to honor her memory, Lars made his way to the graveyard. The familiar path still etched in his mind. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows that stretched across the ground. He found himself hesitating at the entrance, a mixture of sorrow and resolve flooding through him. The village had lost so much, and Ingrid's sacrifice felt like an unfinished chapter in their story. When he reached her grave, Lars knelt down, the cool earth still fresh and undisturbed. The absence of a marker had haunted him since the battle. He couldn't let her memory fade into obscurity. He took a moment to gather his thoughts, recalling the lessons she had imparted, the importance of the old ways, the connection to the land, and the spirits that dwelled within it. "I'm sorry I didn't come sooner," he whispered, placing a gentle hand on the earth. "You deserve so much more than this. You saved us, and now it's my turn to ensure your legacy lives on." With renewed determination, Lars rose to his feet and scanned the surrounding area for materials. He wanted to create a fitting tribute, something that would honor Ingrid's wisdom and the sacrifice she had made. He spotted some sturdy stones nearby, remnants of the old wall that had once surrounded the graveyard. Each stone carried a history of its own, a story that intertwined with those of the villagers. He set to work, arranging the stones in a circular pattern, creating a small but distinct border around the grave. As he worked, he envisioned how Ingrid would have approached the task with grace and care. With each stone he laid, he recounted the tales she had shared, her laughter echoing in his mind. Once he had completed the circle, he carefully picked a handful of wildflowers that bloomed nearby, their vibrant colors a stark contrast to the somber earth. He placed them gently within the circle, a burst of life amidst the stillness of the graveyard. "There," he said, stepping back to admire his work. "You are remembered now, Ingrid. You are a part of this village, and we will honor your teachings. We will carry on your legacy." As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow over the graveyard, Lars felt a sense of peace wash over him. The unmarked grave was no longer just a mound of earth. It was a symbol of resilience, a reminder of the strength they had found in their darkest hour. With this tribute, he knew that Ingrid's spirit would continue to guide them, lighting their path as they moved forward into a brighter future. In the weeks following the battle with the Draugr, the village buzzed with renewed energy and life. Laughter filled the streets, and the aroma of fresh bread wafted through the air, mingling with the scent of blooming flowers. But amidst this resurgence of normalcy, a new legend began to take root. A tale of bravery, sacrifice, and the mystical powers that had saved them from the darkness. The villagers gathered around the bonfire each evening, eager to share stories of that fateful night. They spoke of Lars, the young undertaker who had stood bravely against the Draugr, wielding the power of the ancient rune, and rallying them to form a circle of fire that drove back the undead. As the stories were retold, the details became grander, the emotions more intense, and Lars transformed from a simple villager into a heroic figure in their folklore. Children listened wide-eyed as their parents recounted how Lars had offered himself to the Draugr, standing resolute as the undead surged toward him. They imagined him as a glowing figure, surrounded by flames, commanding the spirits with a voice that echoed like thunder. His sacrifice became the focal point of their new narrative, a tale that would be passed down through generations, imbued with lessons of courage, unity, and respect for the past. But as the legend of Lars grew, so too did the stories of Ingrid. She became a central figure in the villagers' newfound appreciation for the old ways, her wisdom and guidance revered as sacred. The unmarked grave where Lars had laid flowers became a place of pilgrimage, with villagers visiting to pay their respects, leaving offerings of flowers and trinkets in gratitude for her teachings. "Remember, it was Ingrid who showed us the way," they would say, gathering around the grave, speaking softly of the lessons learned. "Her spirit lives on in every decision we make, every choice to honor our ancestors." As Lars watched the legend unfold, he felt a mix of pride and humility. He had acted out of desperation, seeking to protect the village he loved. Yet now he stood as a symbol of hope and strength. He began to share the teachings he had learned from Ingrid, emphasizing the importance of connection to the land and the spirits that inhabited it. The villagers embraced these teachings wholeheartedly, incorporating them into their daily lives. They celebrated seasonal festivals, honoring the cycles of nature and the spirits of their ancestors. The past was no longer something to be feared, but a source of strength and wisdom that could guide them into the future. As the legend of Lars and Ingrid continued to grow, the village thrived in ways they had never imagined. They were no longer just survivors of a haunting. They had become a community bound by shared stories and values, standing united against any darkness that might threaten their way of life. In honoring their past, they had forged a brighter path for the future, one where legends would continue to thrive and inspire generations to come. As the seasons turned, the village thrived under the warm glow of new traditions and legends. The story of Lars and Ingrid had woven itself into the very fabric of their community, shaping their identity as a people who had faced darkness and emerged stronger. Yet, even as life flourished around him, Lars felt a subtle, persistent whisper that beckoned him back to the graveyard, a call that could not be ignored. One evening, as twilight descended, casting a soft lavender hue across the sky, Lars found himself wandering the familiar path to Ingrid's grave. He carried a small bundle of wildflowers, a ritual he had adopted to honor her memory, but this time he felt a sense of urgency thrumming through him. The whispers had grown louder in his mind, like the rustling of leaves in the wind, and he knew he had to heed their call. As he approached the graveyard, the atmosphere shifted. The air felt charged, electric, as if it held secrets just beneath the surface. Lars knelt at Ingrid's grave, placing the flowers gently on the earth. "I miss you, Ingrid," he murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. "Your wisdom guided us through the darkness, but I fear there is still more to learn." The breeze picked up, swirling around him, carrying a soft voice that seemed to echo through the trees. "Listen, Lars," it said, barely audible, yet clear enough to send shivers down his spine. "The past holds more than just memories. It is a living force, a source of power and knowledge." Lars felt a chill wash over him, and he closed his eyes, allowing the voice to wash over him. "What do you mean?" he whispered into the dusk. "What more is there?" "The balance between life and death is delicate," the voice continued, growing stronger. "There are still those who suffer, lost between the worlds. They seek resolution, just as Bjorn and the others did. You must help them find peace." Opening his eyes, Lars looked at the grave markers around him. Each one represented a life lived, a story left untold. A surge of determination filled him. He had thought the battle was over, but perhaps it was just the beginning of a new journey. "How can I help?" he asked, urgency tinging his voice. "Gather the villagers," Ingrid's voice urged, echoing through the night. "Share the knowledge and let them understand the power of remembrance. Only then can the lost find their way home." With renewed resolve, Lars stood up, his heart racing. He would not let Ingrid's final whisper fade into silence. He would share her teachings, guide the villagers in honoring those who had come before, and help the restless spirits find their peace. As he turned to leave the graveyard, a sense of purpose filled him. The night sky stretched above, dotted with stars, each one a reminder of the lives that had touched his own. Lars knew he was not alone in this endeavor. Ingrid's spirit would guide him, and together they would ensure that the memories of the past would light the way for the future. With the weight of his newfound purpose resting heavily on his shoulders, Lars returned to the village. Invigorated by the echoes of Ingrid's wisdom, he gathered the villagers in the square, where the vibrant glow of the bonfire danced in the cool night air. They had become a community forged by trials and triumphs, and now they needed to prepare for the next chapter in their shared story. As the villagers gathered around him, their expressions reflected a mix of curiosity and unease. Lars felt a surge of pride for the resilience they had shown, but also a tinge of fear for what lay ahead. He had witnessed the darkness that had threatened to consume them, and knew that lingering shadows could still haunt the edges of their lives. "I have called you here tonight," Lars began, his voice steady, "not just to celebrate our victories, but to remember those we have lost and those who still seek peace. Our past is intertwined with the spirits that dwell among us, and it is our responsibility to honor them." The villagers listened intently as he shared the teachings he had learned from Ingrid, explaining the significance of their connection to the land and the spirits that roamed the night. He spoke of the power of remembrance, how it could heal wounds and help guide lost souls back to rest. "But we must remain vigilant," Lars warned, sensing the weight of his words. "Just as we face the Draugr, there may be other spirits that linger in the shadows, waiting for resolution. If we ignore their presence, we risk awakening forces we cannot control." As the flames flickered, Lars glanced at the faces around him. Some were filled with hope, others with fear. He knew their journey would not be easy, but together they could forge a path through the darkness. They would create a tradition of remembrance, a ritual to honor the lost, allowing their stories to be told. The villagers nodded in agreement, a collective understanding dawning upon them. They began to share their own memories, stories of loved ones who had passed, and as they did, the fire blazed higher, fueled by their shared emotions. Each story added strength to their circle, weaving an intricate tapestry of connection between the living and the dead. But as the night wore on, a sense of foreboding crept in. From the edge of the forest, the villagers felt the weight of unseen eyes watching them. It was a chilling reminder that the darkness was never far away, lurking just beyond the light. Lars shivered but held his ground, knowing that the bond they had forged could keep the shadows at bay. The eyes in the dark were a testament to the unresolved past, but as long as they remained united, he believed they could face whatever came next. And so the village stood together, a beacon of light against the encroaching night, ready to confront whatever shadows awaited them, armed with the knowledge that the past, when honored, could illuminate their path forward.